CT, man, welcome to the podcast. Appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day, brother. Come through and join the podcast. It's bless us with your presence, man.
No, man, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. Any chance to get to chop it up with you, man, I'm on board. So let's get right to it.
Definitely. Before we jump in, the question that we always ask our guests, because we always talk about bourbon on our podcast as well. Have you tried bourbon, or have you tried any bourbons?
I have tried bourbon. I'm a wine guy myself. I'm
Okay.
a nice Pinot guy. I'm a Willamette Valley, Oregon Pinots. That's my thing. But I won't shy away from a bourbon. I'll say that. But I'm also not running right towards it. So I don't mean to disappoint anybody out there. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Got you. Now, you're an assistant coach at the University of Memphis, a historic program. But before you got there, at what point did you know that you wanted to be a basketball coach?
You know, it's funny. During my playing career, actually, I started studying to become a financial advisor, basically. I got sponsored by a finance company in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona. Went through, got my securities licenses, things like that. And so, I'm sitting there one summer trying to figure out, hey, what's next? I'm doing the stockbroker type deal, and I'm like, this just doesn't hit like basketball practice. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I continued playing for this was about 2009. I continued playing for about 2 or 3 more years. But really at that point, I realized that, basketball was kind of like my thing, right? It was in my blood. It was in my veins. I wasn't gonna be able to get it out. And so I knew at that point, and my wife, Brittany, who had, she played soccer at Arizona State, and she played soccer internationally, and she actually played for, Team USA right at the U19 World Cups. She's like, man, you should be a coach. She's telling me that. And I'm like, all right. So she kind of gassed me up on it, and then we jumped right in, and lucky for me, here we are.
Nice. Now, before your stop at the University of Memphis, you were an assistant coach in the NBA with the Phoenix Suns. And so you got to do a lot of hands-on work and behind the work training with Devin Booker. For like the young people listening, everybody sees the performances, the 70-point performance that he puts on, the bright lights, but talk about some of the work ethic and the training that he puts on behind the scenes that people don't see.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Book that really makes him special is the fact that he can pick up on things and learn and adopt new concepts very quickly. And that also actually goes back to his upbringing, right, with his father, Melvin, who was an outstanding player in Missouri and a tremendous player overseas. He was kind of raised to be a worker. And so it's not a coincidence that he loves to work, which he does. I actually worked with Book during the pre-draft process as well. But not only does he work, he's diligent in getting it right, and it's one of those things where you ask him, like, how many reps are we going to do of something? And his answer is going to be until. It's like, until what? It's like, until we get it. Until we get it, we're going to stay at it till we get it.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about him is it doesn't take long for him to take something that maybe he's never done before and now all of a sudden do it at a high level. And that's really, to me, what separates the great ones, right? So he's a guy who, he's all business when he gets in the building. Respects everyone from the janitors to, the people in the parking garage, to the people in the equipment room, right? Everybody. And then when he gets on the floor, he gets right to business, and he really takes pride in what he does. But at the end of the day, ultimately, he loves the game of basketball. And this is a guy who watches basketball. Not a lot of guys, you think that they do watch, but that's not necessarily true, right? He watches the game. He studies the game. If we weren't playing a game that night, he would literally be locked into whatever game was on and following it. And then he also, one thing that I thought was very mature of him, what he likes to do is he wants to study others to improve his game. And so that's where I kind of got started on making, these player development edits based on other players. And so one thing that we tried to do was help him put in more pick and roll, pull 3-point shots into his game rather than shooting the deep mid-range in the pick and roll, because a lot of the big men are back. They're not the level of the screen. We really watched a lot of Damian Lillard, right? So studying other guys to figure out what he could put in his game. And I think that might be one of the more prouder moments in terms of my relationship with him, is his desire to get better was just so extreme that it overcame any insecurity or anything like that about, well, why I'm better than this guy, or what, you'd think that like the top player, man, I'm better than him. I ain't worried about Dame. I'm on his level. But it's really not like that with him. He's a guy who wants to study, and that's something I have a tremendous amount of respect for.
Quick backstory on his dad, Melvin Booker. So Melvin was playing like in his final years at Kimki, and I was playing in Italy. And so we was playing them in a preseason game. And so I came out, I was pretty hot in the beginning. And so Melvin Booker was talking about, yeah, you got to make him drive, make him drive, make him drive. And so I'm not really a trash talker. And so hearing him saying that, I kind of got slightly offended, like, OG, I could score at any level. It don't make no difference. And so me and OG just kind of talking a little bit of trash back and forth. He said, all right, we're going to see in that fourth quarter, young fella. We're going to see in that fourth quarter. Mind you, Melvin was like 35 at the time out here, knee brace, running the team. I'm like in my second year, just playing at one speed, just trying to score. And so make a long story short, man, I had like 25 going into like the fourth quarter, man. And they switched and started trapping me. And next thing I know, Melvin just started knocking down big shots. Next thing I know, we lose the lead. They win the game. He said, I told you, young fella, we're going to see about that in the fourth quarter. So that's
unbelievable. That sounds about right.
Cool
that sounds like Melvin, no doubt.
Cool dude, man. But going from the NBA to the collegiate level now, what's been some of the adjustments that you had to make in your coaching style, if any?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is, at the NBA level with, some of the best players in the world, obviously, coaching them is more of a collaboration, right? So it's a working relationship that it's kind of like this, right? Where it's eye to eye, where, everybody's opinion, actually means something that helps the whole. When you come to the college level, there's so much new, right? And that jump from high school to college is really significant regardless of how talented you are.
Right.
And the guys who aspire to get to the level above that, right, will come in and just think it's going to happen. So I think that the main adjustment is understanding your audience and really viewing coaching as being a platform to teach, because you have to teach the smallest nuances of everything you do, because for the majority of these guys, it'll be the first time that they've seen something of that nature or something that deep, right? And you and I know from a micro skills perspective, maybe it's a little bit of footwork. Maybe your foot is slightly higher on the left side and the right side on these different, pick and roll coverages or whatever. Now all of a sudden, you're getting rejected in pick and roll coverage if you're the guard, or you're not sending them to the screen, things like that. And so to me, that was probably the main adjustment going into year two here. Lucky for us, we have everybody pretty much back for the most part, with the addition of two transfers who are older and the addition of Musa Cisse. And so for us, that kind of, we're not quite on step one anymore right now. That doesn't mean we can't forget about the fundamentals, but we are starting to progress. And that's really where we need to mature, because when you look at our team last year, really the thing that prevented us from winning a lot of games was the margin of victory for our opponents in the games we lost was actually 4 points. So that's 2-possession game. We were an average free throw shooting team. We were an average defensive rebounding team, and we were a high turnover team, right? So what we need to do is we need to reduce turnovers, obviously make foul shots. But when you get stops, you got to clean up the glass and give only one shot to the opponent.
Right.
And I think those are things that we can control. And then if everything else remains equal, I would anticipate that we're going to be able to be pretty successful.
Now, Penny Hardaway came back to his alma mater, University of Memphis. He's a basketball icon, and he's really an icon in Memphis where he played. It was Memphis State then. But what's it been like being on his staff? Last year, you guys had Mike Miller. Mike Miller stepped down this year. But what's it been like to be on his coaching staff with him being such a big icon in Memphis? And how was his coaching style?
Yeah, I mean, it was a surreal moment when I got a phone call from him, because I didn't know him. Asked if I'd be interested in a spot on his staff. You're kind of like, wait, this is Penny who?
Right. Somebody prank you.
Come on, man. Like, it's a prank call, or what are we talking about here, man? What are we doing? And so I mean, that was a crazy moment, right? Obviously, having you and me being raised in that era when we got to watch up close, his true greatness. But for me, what's awesome about him is just who he is as a person. He's a great guy. He's just a good person. He's good to everybody he comes into contact with. He treats people with respect, with dignity. He in no way, shape, or form exudes any type of, I'm Penny Hardaway, I'm better than anyone. No, that's not him, right? So he's super grounded, which is, to me, very unique, right? the other thing that I love about his coaching style is that he's really locked in on the development aspect, which is also why we vibe, because, development, that's right up my alley. We're not going to sacrifice development to chase wins, right? We are going to chase development with an understanding that if we buy into that process, we feel the wins will come, right? And so it's a different mentality than just chase wins at all costs. And so to me, that's big. And I think that that's really what he's trying to make the cornerstone of this program. And for us to take the next step, hopefully we're going to see that development shape into on-court performance from the guys that we have returning from the youngest team in the country last year. In terms of his coaching style too, the best part about it is that because he buys into this development, right, he really allows freedom for our guys, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, right? We teach a lot out of concepts, not plays. Spacing concepts are just as big with us as anything. And as long as we're making quick decisions and sharing the ball, he's going to be satisfied with that. On the defensive side, that's where he really holds guys accountable, which is really funny when you think about it, because you think about Penny Hardaway, you think about the no-look passes,
Right.
and you think about, the triple doubles and all that type of stuff. But last year, our team, we were the youngest team in the country, we were number one in the country in opponent field goal percentage defense. So we held opponents to 36.1% shooting, which is remarkable. We were number one in the country at defending the rim. We were number 3 in the country at defending the three-point line. And that's really what we hung our hats on. And to me, to see him kind of really demand that effort, that consecutive effort from our guys, and the preciseness in our rotations, and kind of that whole defend the paint at all cost mentality, I think that's been really cool to see, because not everybody can say that they're able to coach defense at an elite level, right? And I think that for him, I know he's hanging his hat on that side of the floor. And again, if we continue to develop the guys the way we feel we can, offense, will be no problem.
Nice. Now, being at an elite university and getting to where you guys want to be competing for a national championship, when you're out recruiting, how do you evaluate talent, and what are some of the things that you're looking for?
Yeah, so it's interesting, because during the recruiting process last year, it was my first kind of go around, right? So I've scouted the G League, I've scouted, college for some NBA draft stuff with the Rockets and with the Suns, but I haven't scouted high school grassroots, right? And so, for me coming in, right, I was trying to get my bearings on all this stuff, but what it came down to was really the same recipe at those other levels, right? So, number one, right, you've got your physical profile, right? Where does that fit in within your system or what you're trying to do, right? So that's obviously easy to identify, right? Size, length, things of that nature, ability to jump, things like that. Outside of your physical profile, right, you've got to try to identify upside, right? Is this someone who is a finished product, or is there room for growth? And what makes you think there is room for growth? Right now, sometimes the physical tools are the things that are going to allow you to say, hey, now I think there's room for growth here because of these physical profile there. But to me, like, that's kind of the foundation. And then you've got the skill profile, right? Skill profile being, what does this guy do good? What does he do well on the floor, right? Is he a shooter? If he is a shooter, what makes him an excellent shooter, right? Can he attack closeouts, right? If he's a shooter, can he not only just shoot off the catch, can he shoot off the move? Can he shoot off the bounce? Things like that, right? If he's a big man, how are his hands in the roll? Does he have a multiple pick and roll mentality on a possession, right? Or is he kind of a one and done guy? Does he roll every time, even if he hasn't gotten the ball the last 3, 4, 5 times, right? Is he going to be someone who's engaged on all possessions, regardless of, what's going on in terms of his touches, right? So when we look at that, then you've got a playmaker type, right? Is he getting other guys involved, feed others before he feeds himself, sees the floor, read the 3 levels of the pick and roll? So that's kind of like your skill profile in general, because when you're putting together a team, right, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Overlapping skill sets aren't necessarily going to help you out, right? So you don't want to have 3, 4, 5 guys that are the exact same profile. The contrast in profiles actually is what leads to beautiful basketball, right? We got a catch and shoot guy on the wing, and we've got a driver on the wing. Not to say these guys can't, not to say the catch and shoot guy can't drive, not to say that the driver can't shoot, but whatever their particular strength is, well, now we want to kick it up, and we got an attacker and we got a floor spacer. right?
Right.
Or on a second side drive, right? Now we're coming downhill. We're trying to stampede the rim. And, if I've got a shooter there, maybe they help, boom, strong side pass, right? Everybody says don't help strong side corner. Happens way too often. Boom,
Instincts.
easy pass, easy shot. And now once he knocks that shot down, guess what? That next time down the floor, that defender is going to think twice before he comes out of that gap. And now we got a clear path to the rim. So that kind of dynamic, I think, is huge, right? If you've got
Mhm.
scorers, right, in positions, quote unquote, 2 through 5, right, you're going to want a distributor at the 1,
Right.
right? But then if you've got guys who have playmaking abilities for others, maybe at position 2, 3, whatever, you got some combo action. Now you can have a little bit of scoring out of the 1. So you've got to figure out what type of roster you want. And then the last part of the profile is the IQ profile, right? With the IQ profile, that also includes the EQ, right? Like your emotional intelligence, right? Your awareness of yourself, right? What do you do after a negative play? So the game of basketball is an art, not a science, right? You're almost like a painter with a paintbrush. It ain't always going to be a masterpiece,
Right.
right? But at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that you're a two-way runner, things you can control, always bringing energy. How do you react to bad calls, right? Does a bad call take you out of your game? How do you react to not getting the ball, being missed when you're open, right? So the emotional intelligence element is huge because you must have self-awareness on the floor. And then the actual on-court basketball IQ is the last element. Are you predetermining what you're going to do because physically you're that much better than everyone around you, right? Or are you actually reading the defense to make the correct decision, right? And so I think those are all the different things that I started looking at, and stars and rankings. There's some really great guys out there that evaluate the grassroots level, right? And so that's a roadmap, but that's not a finite thing, you know. I tell everybody I coached 6 McDonald's All-Americans in the G League. I also coached Anthony Bennett, former number 1 overall pick, in the G League, right? And so the important factor of that is, man, you can't ever view yourself as a finished product because satisfaction leads to failure, right? So
Right.
we've got to try to identify, man, who's going to grow and who's going to grow at a high rate. And I think that it's not a science, but again, for me, we're not recruiting based off rankings, we're not recruiting based off stars, right? Even though we do have an excellent class right now, we had obviously an excellent class 2 years ago, the number 1 class, but we're recruiting based upon fit.
Nice. Now, with the new rule coming in, I know obviously you guys are a young team, but the new rule where the winter sports are going to be granted another year, and now you have the transfer rule to where kids can transfer from school to school and be eligible immediately. Does that affect your recruiting in any shape or fashion, or the way that you
I mean,
coach?
I don't think it affects the way we coach or the way we recruit, right? We're still going to recruit fit regardless of where that fit comes from because we do have 2 transfers on this roster now.
Mhm.
But with that being said, if I'm a younger kid, if I'm a class of 2022, things like that, right? If you don't look at maybe accelerating your timeline, right, like you might get left behind. Because if you think about it, guys coming back for another year, things of that nature, right? That's just you think about the log jams that can be created because of that, right? It's kind of like a bottleneck situation. Instead of
Right.
this group of guys moving on, right now all of a sudden they're staying. So, but the amount of people that are coming in isn't changing,
Right.
right? And so now, obviously you're going to have opportunities to fill your roster with probably late transfers and things like that. But in the same sense, if I'm a youngster on the high school side, right, class of 22, most likely, things like that, I'm probably thinking about moving up my timeline and thinking about really hard where I want to go, where I want to be, because perhaps if I do commit, they'll the coach will honor that commitment, right, to me, and I'll be able to come in there, and we won't be as I guess maybe eager to recruit elsewhere.
Right. Nice. Now, I went to the University of Louisville. Memphis and Louisville have a historic rivalry. Has there been any talks about possibly renewing that matchup between those two schools?
I'm not really kind of involved in that side of things. I mean, I know that I would love to see that myself. And one thing I do know about Penny is Penny wants to play the best. Like there is no doubt about it. So, I mean, if we can make that happen, I think that would be fantastic. Because it's nothing but great for the college game, nothing but great for the game of basketball, great for the fans, really great for all parties, right? So I think that would be an unbelievable matchup and an unbelievable opportunity to kind of get that re-upped. So if I find an opportunity to sprinkle that in, I will.
For sure. Last question before I let you get out of here, Coach. Now, you guys have an immense amount of talent. I believe you guys had 6 McDonald's All-Americans on your team last year, 6 or 7. And how do you get these guys to buy in? Because a lot of these guys come in and they're so used to being the man. They've always been the best at wherever they played, and now they're coming into a situation where possibly they're thinking about they're going to be the man on this team, but there's 6, 7 other guys that's just as good, if not better and stronger. So how do you get these guys to buy in to one team concept to do what's best for the team? Because sometimes that's hard for young guys that really have it. I don't want to say their own personal agenda, but just really have their aspirations of where they want to get to. So they sort of focus on themselves a little more. So how do you get those guys to buy in?
So, it's funny, right? The running joke was what does the G League and prison have in common, right? And the answer is that everybody wants out, right? So, coaching at that level was a great experience for me to understand kind of the ins and outs of the desperation that comes with being on a talented team, right? Because there's a lot of talent at those levels, and everybody wants to get to the NBA, but we know not everybody's going to.
Right.
What we try to do here is we try to help these guys identify, right, where their fit's going to be at that next level, right, and set that expectation through role delegation. Because what you want to be at the next level is round peg, round hole, right? There's going to be a job description for everybody, whatever it's 3-and-D, backup point guard, right? Have to be a defensive minded guy, might have to be a distributor, right? You might have to be a roller rebounder, never touch the ball, things of these nature. Like it's round peg, round hole. If you try to be a square peg, but the job description is round hole, right? They're not going to give you a chance to try to figure out if we can make that work. No, that's a wrap. You're on, learn to speak Chinese is what I always tell guys. And so for our guys right here, we want them to kind of understand that, right? And we want to put out there on all our cards on the table, right? Like this is where you fit. This is how you'll fit. So we do that through a couple different things. Number one is obviously just like the verbal element of that, like letting them know where we see their role to be, why that for them feeling that role is going to be beneficial not only to the team but to themselves, right? And then obviously they have to buy into wanting to be an all-star in that role. That's some guys do that, some guys don't. And the second element there is we use NBA comps, right, as well, right? And the reason we do that, and no, the answer is we're not comping anybody with LeBron or Kawhi or you know what I mean.
Right.
But the reason why we do that, and this is the way I've done this for years now, is I always try to reverse engineer a guy's career, and I start with asking questions, right? Like so, questions will be along the lines of, what NBA players remind you of you, not who you're fans of. You'd be surprised how many dudes talk about guys with one name. You know what I mean? If those guys go by one name, chances are it ain't you, my brother. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it just isn't. And so I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but Eric
we
Gordon's
dealing with
living a pretty
honesty
damn
here.
good life himself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, well, but to rebound and block shots, that job description will pay you $50 million. You know what I mean? Plus, right? To make threes and just sprint to the corner and play solid defense. That's a $50 million job. I always tell everybody, man, you want to buy your mama a house, make a corner three at a 45% clip. That's how you buy your mama a house.
Yes,
everybody
sir.
tries to overthink these things and they try to overdo. And what they don't realize is that at the end of the day, they're not going to get what they want out of that. So our guys have been pretty receptive. Not to say it's always easy or 100% of the time it works. That's not true. But if you go up to any of our guys right now and say round peg, their response is going to be round hole. And that's kind of like our safety net to get them back on track. Because I tell everybody, we want your mentality, right, to be like a Ferrari, right, like a car. Because a Ferrari has great speed, great performance, right? And when a car or a Ferrari starts veering off the road, it's got great response to get back on the road, right? So you're going to veer at times. You're going to, we got to get back on the road.
Right.
However, if your mind and your mentality is like a train, right? When the train gets off the tracks, it's going to take a lot to get a train back on tracks.
Right.
Right. So we want to have that high performance speed, high performance mindset. We also want to have that response to be able to get it back, understand when we need to slow it down. And that's something that's an ongoing process for really a lot of guys. And it's never really a completed process, right? It's a constantly evolving process.
Great analysis, my man. Great analysis, brother. But TT, man, I appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day, man, to come through and bless the podcast, brother. Know you're a busy man, man. Know the season started. You guys got practice, but really appreciate you coming on and blessing the podcast. And best of luck to you guys, man. I'm definitely going to be watching, man. And if you guys come up to this Atlanta way, I'm definitely going to come check out a practice, man. I'll check out a game if you guys make it up this way anytime soon.
Yeah, we've got right now. So we do have, like, I think Auburn over at where the Hawks play. So
Nice.
I'm hopeful hopefully that's good. That's going to be that'll be a great matchup right there. So that should be fun. So we'll link up for sure.
For sure, man. That's a bet, man. But let me know when you get in town, brother. It's good talking to you, man.
All right, appreciate you for having me.
All right, talk to you later.